Hey guys, welcome back. Eric Smith here, Five Reasons Sports contributor, co-host of Scouting the Fins, and that's available on Five Reasons Sports and 3 Yards Per Carry. Today we are going to finish up the review of the 2024 Miami Dolphins offensive line, and we started that out with the tackles, doing individual videos for Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson, and Patrick Paul. We then did a combined video for the guards, Rob Jones, Liam Eichenberg, and Isaiah Wynn. And today we're going to finish it up with the only center to take snaps for the Dolphins in 2024, Aaron Brewer. The Dolphins signed Aaron Brewer to a 3-year, $21 million contract back in March of last year. After he was signed, I started a project where I went through every snap of Brewer's 2023 film with the Titans, and that review is what led me to a conversation that eventually evolved into the opportunities to talk to the audiences that I do today. And it's also helped me form some really cool relationships when it comes to being able to talk football. In my opinion, Connor Williams was a better center than Aaron Brewer. I really did feel like Williams was moving into the range of being considered a special player who was probably going to command, somewhere north of $12 million per year. Injuries obviously derailed that, leaving a hole for Miami to fill. And 2 years into this new offensive scheme, the team went into free agency knowing that there, was no direct replacement for Connor Williams, but they had a vision as to what was needed to succeed in this iteration of the Shanahan offense that was really good at getting chunk plays on the perimeter. So they went with an undersized, fairly unknown player from the Titans that was rated as the worst pass blocking center in the NFL by PFF. As I dug through that tape in 2023, I didn't see the same issues in pass protection that his PFF grade would lead you to believe. And while I didn't see a perfect player by any means, I did see a player that made a lot of sense for what the Dolphins were good at in 2023. The way that I described Aaron Brewer in the video from back then was that if you're doing a Madden create a player and you had limited skill points that you could assign to your newly created player, and you were to use those points to make a center who isn't perfect but is good for what Miami wanted to do, you'd come up with someone pretty close to Aaron Brewer. That evaluation obviously ended up being pretty accurate. Brewer has been a great addition to the team, and he was the best offensive lineman in 2024. You could argue that Teron Armstead was better when he was on the field, but that's a big part of playing the offensive line, being on the field. Brewer played every single snap in 2023. So let's dig into some of these numbers. We've talked before that the grades are based on every snap of every game for every player. Came out to 5,700 plays graded this year, and the overall average for the offensive line was a 8.31. And you can see that Brewer, in his just over 1,000 snaps, was above that average at 8.51. When we look at the separation between pass block and run block, you can see that, like everybody else, his pass block was a bit higher than his run block grade, but both of these grades are among the team leaders in those categories. When we talk about pass protection for a center, the majority of their protections are going to be slide right or slide left. And when they do that, they're going to have help to both sides. So this is something that you should expect centers across the league to grade well in these categories. And then you have, a protection that's called different ways, right? Some people call it 5-0 protection. Some people call it gone. The high school that I coach at, we call it a spider protection, kind of like the spider web going out to each defender. But this is the closest thing you're going to get to a center being one-on-one. And as we look at the film example here of that, you can see that, Brewer's the center here. He's got a nose, and then over here we've got two defenders for two linemen, and then you got the tight end that's going to help over here as well. But essentially, it's 5-on-5 blocking. So as this play starts out, you're going to see the guards are going to both set to the outside, and that leaves Brewer one-on-one with this nose tackle. And this is going to be the most in space that you're going to see a center when it comes to one-on-one pass protection. It's not like a tackle where you're out here and you have unlimited space to the outside. There's limited space to work with here, and most centers should do well here. And like I said, what I saw when I watched his 2023 film was that he was better than what PFF was giving him credit for. And on this, you can see a good example of him going against a bigger player, that left hand stabbing out there to slow down the momentum, and then being able to torque that defender down into the ground. As we flip back over here to his grades, talking about the run blocking, so gap, power, man scheme. So that's going to be like your counters, your power, your trap. This is typically going to be your center blocking to the backside of it because your guard is usually pulling. Usually your backside guard is pulling. So in a gap or power scheme to the left, your right guard would be pulling, leaving a void there. So your center would be blocking back on that. And as we look at the film example for that one, you can see that this one's actually going to the right, but we've got the guard and the tight end. This is QB counter is what this is, but you can see that with the guard pulling, that's going to leave a void to this area that Brewer is going to fill. So he's just blocking back on this. And in this case, you can see that tackle tries to slide over the top, but Brewer's athleticism does a good job of being able to stay with him. You've also got to be aware as Brewer is blocking back on this, if this guy is shooting the gap, right, trying to follow that guard, then you've got to be able to stop that penetration as well. So this is a pretty common block for a center where he's got to step to the backside and seal a backside tackle. And you can see that Brewer graded out pretty well doing that. When we talk about outside zone, so for a center on outside zone, you can be doing one of two things usually. Either you're trying to cut off a defensive tackle that's to the play side, or you're trying to climb to a linebacker on the second level. Either way, this requires a lot of quickness out of your stance. This is going to be a more difficult block. And this is really where, you know, even though a 7.91 doesn't look like a great grade on this, when you look at some of the other centers that try to run this across the league, you can definitely see a difference in what it looks like when they're doing it versus a player with the athleticism of Aaron Brewer. And here we're going to get a outside zone to the left. In this case, they've got a one technique defensive tackle to the left side here. So you're going to see Rob Jones and Aaron Brewer working through that defender. And, Jones is climbing. You obviously ideally like to see Jones cut that defender off and to keep that lane right there. But just getting attached to that linebacker is going to be good enough to get a good gain on this play. But when we look at what Aaron Brewer is doing here, right, the quickness to snap this ball, right, get the hips flipped and get into position, right? You can see how his head was even with the defender, and now he's taking over that block, right? And the quickness that Brewer is able to do that is what allows Jones to be able to climb to that next level. So we're looking at centers in this scheme, right? A lot of them don't have that quickness to get there right now. They need more help from the guard. So this is definitely a spot that Brewer excels at when we're looking at his fit in this offense. And then we're going to look at his inside zone stuff, which, as you can see, wasn't quite as good. And when we look at Aaron Brewer running inside zone, what you're going to get is this is going to be a inside zone to the right. And you can see that we're just not getting a ton of movement there. Uh, you know, Achan is going to be reading the leverage of this block right here, right? You can see that they're not getting movement, so his eyes are going to the cutback where Lester Cotton and Teron Armstead are getting movement on the backside there. But ideally, when you're running inside zone, you want to get vertical movement on this two-eye technique defensive tackle. And you can see that Aaron Brewer and Liam Eichenberg, they just don't get it. This is not a big area of strength for any of the interior offensive linemen, and Aaron Brewer would be included in that. Coming back over here to finish up the grades. So going to the right side, gap power scheme. So this would be Brewer technically going to the left. Came in at an 8.48, which was a little lower than going the opposite way, but pretty similar. And then outside zone to the right, you can see that it's a little higher than his outside zone to the left stuff. And that, I think, is probably what you would find across the league when you talk about this, is that, a center that is right-hand dominant like Aaron Brewer is probably going to be just a hair better going to his right. And then same thing with the inside zone stuff, not as good as the outside zone, but a little better going to the right than the left. And you can see that across these grades that your gap and power schemes where he's blocking back in more of a position block, and his outside zone grades where he's using that quickness to cut off defenders are better than his inside zone either way. And I don't think that's going to change just by getting bigger guards the way that a lot of guys have, wanted the Dolphins to do. I feel like if you go that direction, you are limiting the player that was your best offensive lineman in 2024 by going to a heavier scheme that does not favor him. So as we look forward to 2025, my expectation would be that we can continue to see them building towards that outside zone scheme more so than just adding those big maulers at guard and trying to go to an inside zone scheme. Last thing that I want to look at with Aaron Brewer here, there was a lot of talk about Austin Jackson and how much he affected the running game when he left. And, if we flip back to that outside zone run and we look at that again, we saw earlier in the season that, we were able to get big gains off the right side. Now, this is a left side play. I don't have any for the right side pulled, right? But if you look at the movement that Teron Armstead is getting here, even though this tackle, right, it's not a complete stalemate. He's getting a couple of yards of movement there, essentially. But the movement that you're getting out there is making this a perfectly fine block. The difference when we lost Austin Jackson on the right side here was that, let's pretend this is Kendall Lamb and that everything is flipped here. This tackle is getting stalemated right there, right? So look at where the mouse is right now. As that play progresses, right, you can see the way that that is closing when you don't have a tackle that can get that movement as well. So, like I said, the last thing I wanted to look at here was the difference in grading. When Austin Jackson was in the lineup, Aaron Brewer was grading out at an 8.77. And without Jackson, Aaron Brewer's individual grade dropped down to a little bit below average, still pretty close to it, but a 8.26. So, I think this is just another case to emphasize how important the tackles are in this outside zone running scheme. Hope you guys have enjoyed this series. I know I've enjoyed doing it. There's definitely been a couple things that were eye opening as I went through the grades I didn't expect. And I hope that you guys found some stuff that you didn't expect either. As we move forward, we'll probably do some stuff on free agents or draft picks. Let me know what you guys want to see. Feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this offensive line review, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks for watching.